Michael Shifter joins me now. He's president of the Inter-American Dialogue, a foreign policy think tank here in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Razor-thin margin, less than 1%. This is the closest election there in almost 3 decades. Keiko Fujimori had quite a lead for quite some time. So what happened here?
Well, several things happened. First of all, Kaczynski changed and became much more forceful, criticizing Fujimori and the Fujimori years when her father ruled, in high levels of corruption, drug trafficking, authoritarian rule. Before that, he had been quite mild in his criticism. So he changed his campaign strategy, and it was reflected in the last debate, the second debate, which Peruvians overwhelmingly thought that he won. And secondly, so he became a stronger candidate, much more forceful, and she kind of played into that narrative of that critique because there had been some scandals and corruption in her own campaign. Her Secretary General was accused of money laundering of her party, Fuerza Popular, and her vice president was also involved in some shenanigans as well. That brought back a lot of the memories of the 1990s that are not very favorable. And one was the third candidate who almost made it into the second round, Veronica Mendoza, left, who doesn't agree with the economic model in Peru, but didn't back. And so at the end, threw her support to Kaczynski, and that was also very, very important.
But that really changed in just a matter of days.
Just the final days.
What would Peru look like under President Kaczynski?
Well, Kaczynski is somebody who is very much free market, global trader, was finance minister, worked for the World Bank, and clearly his expertise is in economic policy and trade policy. He is also took some pride in being much more honest than some of the corruption problems that were associated with the Fujimori years, and that became associated with Keiko's campaign, not Keiko directly, but some of the people that she surrounded herself with. I think economic management is going to be very good, but the test is going to be how is he going to deal with some of the social problems in Peru, which are very, very significant. And the economy is slowing down a little bit, even though it's one of the best performers in Latin America. And of course, he has very, very low representation in Congress. He only has 18 out of 130 members of Congress are from his party. Fujimori's party has 73 out of 130. So in order for him to really get anything done, he's going to have to show his political skill, and that's going to be a real test.
None of the accusations leveled against her have been a surprise. It's always been there. She's denied them all, of course. What do you think the next leader of Peru will need to do with the population being so divided, almost half voted for him, half voted for her? What are they going to have to do to bring the country together?
Well, that's going to be the real challenge. This is a very polarized country, and this was a very polarized election. And I think that there is some common ground between both sides. They shared certain views on economic policy, for example. The country has benefited over the last years, not only in terms of growth, but reducing poverty and even inequality. But they're going to have to reach some agreements on some issues in terms of reform, education reform, justice reform, police reform. One of the issues that was very strong in this campaign was crime. Peruvians are very worried about crime and insecurity, and so there has to be some sort of consensus reached on that as well. So I think Kaczynski really has to reach out to other political forces in the country and really has to remind himself why he was elected president. He was very, very lucky. He was the right man at the right moment, and the vote was really not pro-Kaczynski as much as anti-Keiko and anti-Fujimori. And so that really has implications about his strategy going forward, and he's got to understand that.
All right, Michael Shifter, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
If you like what you just saw, follow us on social media and visit our website, cctv-america.com.